While having a woman of color as mayor is a first for Durham, blazing trails is nothing new for Elaine O'Neal. Before taking office in December, Mayor O'Neal had a distinguished career as a district court and superior court judge, where she tore down barriers and built a legacy of leadership around complex and difficult issues. She knows Durham and its communities well, and is now putting her vast experience to work for us all. Welcome to City Life. I'm Beverly Thompson. Joining me to talk about her new role is Mayor Elaine O'Neal. Mayor, welcome, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Good. So there's no doubt you're Durham through and through. And you grew up in the West End community. Right. You went to public school here. You went to college. You went to law school here. So after all that, how did it help mold you into being the person you are today?
Well, you know, my parents, I guess it goes back to the start on the West End, and my parents, they were always community workers. You know, they worked throughout the community in various capacities. My mother was a precinct worker, and we had strong ties to Moorhead Avenue Baptist Church, which is my grandmother was a founder of that church.
Wow.
And we have deep roots in the West End. So I grew up watching neighbors helping neighbors, because not only was my mother and father like that, the neighborhood was like that.
Wow.
So I've always been a part of a community that cared for its young people. And that's obvious in that, you know, I was trained by the community, and I've grown up in the community and just doing what I was taught from a very early age.
And we're glad you are. So what inspired you to go into the law?
Finances at that time. Actually, my math degree comes from the fact that I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer specializing in robotics. And then I got to some higher level physics and figured out that I really didn't like that. So I kind of struggled a bit about what I was going to do with the math degree. And I was torn between a business degree and a law degree. And then the stock market kind of waned during that time. And so I was gonna have to finance it. And so I needed something that I would be able to finance and come out ready to have a job, you know, or to be your own boss. And so that's exactly what happened. I graduated from law school after financing it. And then I passed the bar and I went into private practice.
You make it all sound so simple.
No, it was not. Very difficult.
So I know you were a district court judge for 17 years, and you're the first woman in the county to be named the chief. And then you were elected to Superior Court, right? First female judge. And how did your time on the bench actually help your view of what's great about Durham, and then figure out what some of the challenges actually are?
Well, you know, from the bench perspective, you have a front row seat at human drama. And a lot of times it's the very best in certain situations and the very worst of human drama. And so the exposure to a world that looks totally different from what most ordinary, everyday people will. You know, you have some interaction with the court. Most people will have a speeding ticket, but normally you can send a lawyer in and you don't have to show up. But for certain criminal offenses, especially in that arena, you know, that can be situational or confined to either your household or your neighborhood for the most part, or the communities that you come from, pretty much. So in the civil arena, we often talk a lot about the criminal arena, but in the civil arena, you can see a variety of situations over there. That's where you have your evictions, that's where you have your medical malpractice cases, that's where you have personal injury cases, you know, so you see another side of human drama on that end. And, you know, and not everything is personal like that, but that view from the bench allows you to have a peek inside various walks of life and situations that gives you a unique look at human perspectives. And so I think having that varied look at human beings and their behaviors has helped me to take a different approach when dealing with some of our issues in the city.
I've often wondered, is it hard to stay objective when you're a judge? I mean, do you become emotionally involved
yes.
at some level?
Some of the stuff that you see, you can't unsee it. So the murder cases that I tried, you never forget that. Some of the pictures that you see from some of those situations, you can never forget that. You can never forget the harm to a child, or some of the personal injury things that you see and read about. So yes, it does take a toll. I sometimes say I have a little bit of PTSD from all of that, because I stayed up there fairly long, 24 years, and as a mother and as a woman, sometimes we are the nurturer, and we are the not saying that men don't care, but I think there's just a different type of caring, and so I carried a lot of it with me, still do.
Wow. So I know you've been pretty open about the fact that during your time as a judge, your son was serving a life sentence in prison. That experience, I'm sure, just offered you a very unique perspective to view the criminal justice system. How did that kind of teach you or help you understand what people who were involved in the system are actually going through?
Well, my son actually had 2 trials, so I had 2 bites of the apple to see the inside of that arena from a personal vantage point. Little Greg is not my biological son, but he's the first child that I took care of, and so he came to live with us, he and his father and I, when we first got married, and stayed with us through most of his youth, and though when we divorced, I still maintained contact, because by then I had his brother, and I was determined that they would be raised closely together. And so when little Greg received that sentence, I could not go into the courtroom and hear it. And it was being, he was tried right here in Durham, so I knew all of the players, all of the attorneys that were involved, the judge, and I told him as he was sentenced that day, and I kind of figured it was coming. This was the second bite at the apple, and there's something to be said for that. A lot of people don't get tried twice after they've gone through a hung jury, but little Greg did. He was tried twice here in Durham County, and I was there the whole time. I testified in both trials, but I was determined that I was not going to receive that in my spirit when he got that sentence. I said, "You're going to have to go back in there, son, and take it like a man, but listen, but don't let it sink in. I cannot hear it. I'm not going to hear it, because I know you, and I know that this will not be the final say." And so he served for 18 years. I visited 11 different prisons, all up and down the highway. And my being a judge definitely did not help him. It hurt him in a lot of instances, because it silenced me. I still had my son to take care of. And, people were, waiting for me to make the wrong move or, try to intervene. And so I was pretty much silenced in that arena to just be the mother that came to visit him. So there were very few times that I could advocate publicly on his behalf, and I maintained my silence. Plus, he was going into a prison where eventually I was sentencing people into that same arena, so he was at a level of danger with my position. So it was some scary times. So that gave me an inside peek into something that I hope no other family has to experience, which is why I'm so determined that we try to resolve some of our crime issues, because that's the one thing that you do that people don't understand, is that when a person is sentenced to prison, their whole family is in prison with them. And there's a level of worry that there's never a good night's sleep.
I hear you.
There's never a time or day that I did not think about him, and especially having to work in that arena. So I think it prepared me to be able to tell people that I've been there too. I've been there too. I had a girl come in court one day, and she was like, "Well, you don't know what I've been through." She was trying to argue about bond for her family member, and you haven't been in this situation. I said, "Honey, wrong judge. Wrong judge. I have been in this situation. As a matter of fact, I'm living it. And it was, I lived it for 18 years.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that was a tough time, but it's just no secret that there are just a lot of homicides happening in Durham right now. And you recently indicated that you're working on some solutions that you don't want to talk about. And some people in the community as well as the media say, well, you're not being transparent. Can you explain that one more time? You know, what your position is and why?
Sure. Well, because of my unique position in this city, in terms of having grown up here and then having served on the bench, you know, it's sort of it's a duality there. I've never really, what we say, lost my street cred. So I still, you know a lot of people that are in a lot of situations, life situations. You don't get around that as a Black person. You're not immune from that. I just funeralized one of my cousins, eulogized him about 2-3 years ago, 2 years now, who was murdered by here in Durham. So I don't get to not live somewhat in that arena, but that has allowed me to maintain some contacts out there in the world. There are also a number of other elected officials who have been working with other various, and I hate to call them gangs. I don't like that terminology. It sounds like they're aliens and they're UFOs. These are people. So there are a number of other elected officials who've been working closely with what I call reformers or shot callers on the streets. So when I ran again, they asked me if I would meet with these particular young men. And some of them I happen to know. Like I said, I'm from Durham, and some of them I know, some of them I met then, but they had an interest in picking up what have pretty much been left off because of COVID. And that is, they have a desire to lay down their weapons, their tools of the trade, get themselves in a position for jobs and housing. Housing is a big bugaboo. And so we have listened and talked, and they have been intervening in some of the violence that you've seen happen. They've come in either before or after to try to mitigate some of that, and they have. Now, but we are building a trust relationship, right? So when I first started going down this aisle, I was getting calls from one particular reporter from a local news organization who called me, and texted me about every day about talking about the violence. And I said, no, I'm not going to talk about this particular part, what I'm doing. At that time, I'm putting about 10, 15 hours a weekend, just getting to know the guys, kind of figuring out, what their territory was, what the turf is that they're going to try to go in. Just some deep things that it's only a very few of us that sit in these government seats can have these kind of conversations with these guys to see how they can intervene to help things out. So she was particularly wanted to be particularly sort of aggressive about me talking, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to talk. So then we began to develop a story behind that. Now we've had a retreat with these guys with at least 35, 40 community service organizations. They were at the crime cabinet the other day. They were. We've had several meetings with them with various city officials, county officials, including the police chief. She hadn't met them. So there are no secret meetings going on or a lack of transparency. It's just that I am unwilling to go in front of a camera and say exactly what they're doing. You put me in danger, you put them in danger. And I'm not willing to do that.
Thank you for explaining that. I really appreciate it. What do you say to people, though, who wonder, okay, should a mayor be doing that? Should a mayor be sitting at the table negotiating?
What do I say? I am Elaine first. I'm a mother first. Then I'm I'm also a lawyer, and I've also been a judge. I've also been a dean, and now I'm a mayor. What do you want me to do? You want me to do the same thing that's been done, or you want me to take all those skills that Durham has trained me with to try to make a community come together?
Okay, well, thank you for making it clear and explaining that to people who have that question.
We can take a different approach, and we can try to make sure that we are doing things in a different manner that allows for people to be inclusive and try to find some ways to do what they have actually asked of us, and that is help us to find a way to stop so that we can have jobs and housing.
Okay, well, thank you so much for explaining that again. Well, let's pivot a little bit to racial equity. I know you have played a very key role in moving us forward as a community. You chaired a task force that Mayor Steve Schewel actually named. Where do you think we stand now with the results of that task force effort that you helped lead?
As a city or as a country? Now, Bev, you ask the hard questions. You're just digging deep now.
Let's just say as a city. Let's narrow it down.
As a city, you know, the one thing that I have enjoyed as a part of this job is that this city is so well run, you know, and I've not met one disgruntled employee, which is highly unusual for the situations that I've been in. And there is a desire that I've seen in this COVID arena. Mind you, not everybody's back, as you know, and so you see people in bits and pieces. It's becoming more, but there is a desire that I've seen for equity in all kinds of spaces. You know, Durham likes diversity.
Yes.
You know, we like diversity, and that is evident in the city too. And most of the time when I've had presentations, that question or that lens is there. Now, so from what I'm seeing, we're moving along, and I'm really pleased with that. Of course, we all can do better, but you know, we've had this virus that has kept us from coming together to actually seeing what the culture really looks like from my perspective. So, but I'm pleased with what I see. I am committed to making sure that does not become a document that sits on somebody's shelf, that it is a living document. So I'm pleased with our progress so far.
Good. Do you think racial equity can truly be achieved? Even in just say the country and then narrow it down to Durham. I think Durham is doing an amazing job as well, but got a way to go.
I don't know, because I don't know that we've ever seen it. That was one of the points that I made when we were doing the work, is that we've never seen it. So we have no idea really what it looks like. I'm always hopeful about when it comes to humans because of what I've seen in the court system. I've seen some acts of forgiveness that have just been mind-blowing, you know, where people have had tremendous and horrible things to happen to them or their family members, and the human heart's ability to forgive and move forward, and watching relationships build after that. So I am going to hold on to that hope that there is an opportunity for us here in the United States to become a united States of America. And I'm hopeful that we also as a state can do that. And I'm definitely seeing the beginnings of it in our city.
That is hopeful. That is so hopeful.
We're going to hold on to that.
Good.
Keep hope alive.
And keep hope alive,
Keep hope
for
alive.
sure. So I know growth is an important topic to you as well. What do you see as the good part of growth? And then what do you see it, or how do you see it putting a strain on some sectors of our community?
Well, you know, having grown up in Durham, I've had the benefit of looking at downtown Durham all my life. And when I was a child, we shopped downtown Durham. And you saw everybody downtown Durham. Black, white, rich, poor, everybody. You never really think about it until you get older. But that's what I saw. In high school, we would come downtown and have parties at different locations downtown. And but you know, I've never lived anywhere else, so I don't know how growth lives. But I do know in terms of the growth that I've seen, I like the look of it, you know, in a lot of instances. As I've looked at the Go Triangle renderings of what downtown Durham could look like if we at some point get a good bus system that's connected to a great a commuter rail system, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
you know, that's fantastic.
Potential is amazing.
Potential.
Yeah.
However,
However.
a lot of the cities and a lot of the parts of the city that I know and I've traveled, and a lot of the people that I know, their lives haven't changed. And so it bothers me that downtown Durham has become more segregated than I've ever seen it in my lifetime. I've never seen downtown Durham that segregated.
Is there an answer to it?
Well, yeah, but it's going to cause for people who the haves to be willing to help the have-nots in new and innovative ways. You know, as I was thinking about all of the different night spots that we as Black people had when I was growing up, the Stallion Club, the Times Square, you know, all kinds of nightclubs. We don't have any nightclubs anymore in this city.
Yeah.
We had we ended up going from like many to one, the talk of the town, and now it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely
And
a change.
So, but a lot of us have gotten income, but we've never been able to move in those spaces that allow for us to be able to be competitive in this market in order to try to have an entertainment spot. Or in some of the neighborhoods that I've gone in, they've not changed at all. There's been no. I heard something the other day that was shocking, but now that I think about it, it's true. There has been no real development for distressed communities in Bragtown since Oxford Manor was built.
Years ago. Many years ago.
And to hear that,
Yeah.
it's shocking. As you watch development going every, we can't get nothing.
Do you think
We
you can
have
make a
nothing.
difference in that?
I'm gonna
Or
try.
counsel?
That's what I'm here for, I think. I'm gonna try, but it can't just be me. Because at the end of the day, I'm a retired 9-to-5 worker. If I don't get my retirement check for 6 months, I'm done too.
Okay.
So I have no other choice but to try.
Okay. All right. I understand that. So besides racial equity and growth, what do you think is Durham's most pressing need?
Housing,
Housing.
without a doubt, for our most marginalized. For young people that I believe have never had stable housing.
Is there a solution? I know we're working on some great programs
Yes.
here in the city.
And there's the urgency of now with that. You know, it's like, you know, when we started working with these guys, that was the first issue, and I kind of knew it from my years on the bench that was a key issue. Housing, just stabilizing housing. Housing, if you don't have a place to lay your head at night that's safe, all bets are off for whatever comes the next day. So, and that was the first question. And what can we do about it? We have all these different projects that are going on that are coming down the pipe, but summer's coming. We folk need housing like yesterday. And so I have begun to ask people, okay, we have a lot of abandoned buildings around here. Is there not a way we can try to see if we can renovate some of those buildings? And a lot of these guys have skills and they're offering to be able to do that so that they can have a place to lay their head. It's a lot of boarded up buildings, but there's a process in finding out who owns it, whether they be willing to, try to help our community developers as well as the city and the county to renovate these spaces. But I really need some innovation in that area. It's urgent. Like one of the guys, we were in the Durham Crime Cabinet today, and they can be really direct. And he's saying, so we were talking about housing and the urgency of now. And a lot of them they are very organized, they're very organized. So one of the guys is saying, look, we have to get it out of the mud. We have to make a living right now out of the mud. Some of them are. And one, he was saying, when I was out there, he's out of the world now. When I was out there with my structure, my job is to make sure I feed these families. So you're not going to be comfortable in your $1 million penthouses downtown Durham, because my job is to tell them to go get it and bring it right here so we can feed our families. And they want to be able to that some of these folk have changed their lives and they're changing their lives, but we can't keep asking them to lay down how they make their living in this kind of underground economy, and you offer them nothing. And that's so far has been our issue with helping, trying to help these guys. We have nothing to offer, especially in terms of housing. Nothing.
Mayor, you have such a great perspective, and you bring so much to the table to help us see what the solutions could be. And you seem like a very solutions-oriented person.
Yeah, I'm trying. This is a new arena. A lot of times I feel like I'm walking on a tightrope because I am really walking in about 4 or 5 different cultures, right? So how do we get people to see each other as neighbors, and how do we help each other? Because it's not, they're not aliens, like I said. These are young men who, for whatever reason, have been marginalized either by acts of themselves or by situations that they were born into a lot of times. And they want an opportunity to be a part of the solution. And I think we can, but it causes me to have to, and the other elected officials and community members, to kind of walk in a different realm where you don't want them to think that we are being political, that we're being another part of the problem, in terms of we're going to offer you something, but it's only what we want to offer you and not what you need. And so we're taking a different kind of approach. As time, we'll see how it works out. But this is the approach I know from dealing with them in certain arenas, and so I'm willing to give it a shot.
Okay.
But it ain't easy.
I hear you. Thank you for taking the task on. So, Mayor, I know you've had a lot of experience as a public official, but not in local government. So is there anything that has really just surprised you about working in local government?
Yes. 2 things I would say, and I'll start with sort of, the time and how, and some of it I think is because I'm another first, which is something we're hoping to normalize, women being in these positions, so that the first doesn't become a thing. So one of the things has been the number of meetings and speaking requests that I have gotten. It's been overwhelming. I think I'm now in the May or June and trying to come up with times to speak. The learning curve, there's a lot to learn about city government, but however, as mayor, you don't get the opportunity to do that. You have to kind of fly the plane and try to learn it as best you can in this COVID situation. So just my learning curve has been steep. And then the vast number of emails that you get. Other mayors that kind of warn me about it, Elaine, you're gonna get a lot of emails, don't get caught up in that. But try to make sure you have a system in place to be able to address it. But at the end of the day, that's been overwhelming, the number of emails. And a lot of them are nice, but some of them can be downright nasty. I've been called dumb. I've been calling you the dumb mayor, it's lunacy, on. I'm like, now, I'm not going to be too many more dumbs. I'm going to tell you that now. That's where I draw the line. 'Cause at least I'm out here trying. So that's when you bring out the West End.
I hear you.
You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna be too many of those. So, I've had to, tell people, look, if you're gonna be insulting, don't, lose this email address. Because I'm not a typical politician, so I'm not gonna be too many more dumbs and stupids and all that stuff. So, and that's the other part that has bothered me, is that the meanness of people. They have been. A lot of times they are mean to city employees who don't have the luxury of saying, don't write me no more. Now, I can say that, But city employees have to kind of say, oh, I'm going to work with you and all, and you have people saying, we demand that you do this because we pay your salary. How that work out? I want you to really explain that, how you pay their salary. Make that connection for me, because so they use these broad categories to try to intimidate and make people do what they want to do. And I have not enjoyed that, watching that for our city workers.
So, like I said, I could talk to you all day, but I know you need to go to another appointment and we need to wrap this up. But in general, when you're traveling, what do you tell people about Durham?
We're city strong. I love my hometown. It's allowed me to be me, and they've taken whatever that was that they saw as a child, and all along, my neighbors, my families, my friends, my professors at the law school, at Hillside, being in the band, that has been the greatest part of me. It's my family and my city. And so to be able to give back in such a way, I'm honored to represent Durham, and I hope I represent them well. I understand the good side and the bad side. We're all people, and just like cities, we have our issues, but at the end of the day, I believe we're a loving community, and I believe we're going to be the beacon on the hill that kind of shows the way in some areas.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mayor, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add about this hard job? No other way to describe it. That takes a lot of attention and a lot of perspective.
Well, I guess, Bev, the only thing I would add, because, we have so many people who have different faiths and opinions, and, the separation of church and state and all that. But I'm going to be true to myself, and I'm going to be able to sleep at night. So I give honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who made all things possible, and I could not leave that out.
Mayor, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to get to know you better and help the community get to know you better and give you a chance to talk about this hard job you've taken on.
Yes, it's my assignment for now.
Okay.
I'm not a perfect person, everybody, but I will give you my best. And hopefully my best will come from and it will come from my heart.
That's
I know
all
it
we
will
can
come
ask.
from my
That
from
is
my heart.
all we can ask. Mayor,
That's
thank you
it.
so much.
Thanks, Bill.
Well,
I appreciate you.
That does it for City Life. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Watch us on the Durham Television Network and on YouTube. And now you can listen to our podcast on iTunes. I'm Beverly Thompson. Thank you for joining me to learn more about city life in Durham.